You know Joe Biden very well. You say he is a good friend of yours. Let's focus specifically on foreign relations. Put up for us a Biden foreign relations policy against a Trump one.
Well, I think the fundamental difference is going to be that Joe Biden believes that the United States has to exercise world leadership in the world and to build our alliances, build our trust in those alliances and the trust of our allies in the United States, and believes that if the United States doesn't lead, very frankly, nobody else will. And I think that contrasts with President Trump's approach, which has largely been to withdraw leadership from the world into an America First kind of approach, in which most of the world is just not sure as to where the United States stands. He's kind of undermined those alliances that are so important to our security. He's undermined our intelligence agencies by refusing often to listen to the truth that they're providing. And I also am concerned about the military-civilian relationship with regards to the military. I think it's important to recognize that the military is not to be used for political purposes, but is to be used to protect our security abroad. I think Joe Biden recognizes all of those strengths, and he'll restore basically the international approach that the United States has had since the end of World War II.
Secretary Panetta, I wanted to ask you about something slightly different, which is this intelligence report that came out of the Senate yesterday, this 1,000-page report. I don't imagine you've had time to go through it yet. But I wonder, I think a concern of some of us is that it's gotten lost amongst all the news going on, the conventions, the United States Postal Service, the upcoming election. And I think we forget this is a Republican Senate. This report comes out of a committee controlled by the Republicans, and it is a devastating report on Russian interference and relationship with the Trump campaign in 2016. So I wonder, what are your thoughts on this report?
Well, I agree with you. I think it is a devastating report, and it's a bipartisan report from the Senate Intelligence Committee. So I think it's highly credible in terms of the points that it makes. And, the concern I think that I've had for a long time with this president is not recognizing the threat from Russia for whatever reason. As somebody involved at the CIA and Secretary of Defense, there is no question that the Russians' primary goal is to weaken the United States, to undermine our institutions, and to create instability in the United States. That's what they're after. That's what they do. And to not have a president who acknowledges the threat from Russia and basically is willing to say to Putin, first of all, do not interfere in our election process. We will not tolerate that, and we will do everything to stop you. And then when he did not address Putin, when we got intelligence on the fact that the Russians were putting bounties on the heads of our men and women in uniform in Afghanistan, imagine the Russians basically paying to have our troops killed in action. But the biggest problem is that the president did not say to Putin directly, we will not stand for you doing this, do not do it, or we will take action against you. That is what the president of the United States should be saying to Russia. And so the report that came out basically indicates that there has been a relationship with regards to the Russians, not only in the election, not only in 2016 election, but that it is also taking place in the 2020 election. And that's something I think every American ought to be concerned about. And very frankly, the president of the United States ought to be concerned about that as well.
Secretary Panetta, Rick Davis, good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. The one area that Trump seems to have not retreated from is the Middle East. He inherited a major ISIS problem and unraveled the Iranian nuclear deal almost on arrival. But now declaring some victory with a peace accord between UAE and Israel. How much of that would Biden adopt as his policy in the Middle East, or would he take a different approach to these countries about building a coalition against Iran?
Well, I've always operated on the basis that the Middle East is critical to the security of the United States. And frankly, one of the problems we've had is with a number of failed states in the Middle East, from Syria to Yemen to Libya, that those countries become breeding grounds for terrorism, for ISIS. In particular, my biggest criticism with Trump was when he withdrew our forces from Syria and basically abandoned the relationship with the Kurds, who were working with us to go after ISIS. We basically handed Syria to Iran and Russia and Hezbollah. Look, does he deserve some credit with regards to Israel and the UAE? Perhaps. I think they were trying to work on that, and I give him credit for that because it is important to have these Arab countries recognize the security of Israel. That's a step in the right direction. But the reality is that the United States has to build an alliance with moderate Arab countries and with Israel to confront ISIS, which still remains a real threat to the United States, and also confront Iran. I think right now we have a very tenuous relationship with Iran that could produce war at any time. And I think one of the things that the Biden administration would do, which I think is a step in the right direction, is to go back to our allies, Russia, China, Germany, Great Britain, France, and restore that alliance that was working with Iran, that produced the agreement, and force that alliance to try to get Iran to make concessions on missile development and on supporting terrorism. I think that's the best way to try to get Iran back to the table.